So hello everyone and welcome to the Expert Edge. So let me set the scene here. Every enterprise I speak to has invested heavily in customer journeys, CRMs, orchestration, channel strategy, or real money going in, right? So as an analyst, I see a gap here and I keep seeing this gap for many years. And the gap will be the communication layer. Let's imagine about the actual letters, statements, notifications, regulated documents is still running on the separate tooling, right? And the separate governance, slow release cycles. And often we feel the disconnect, we feel the fragmentation here. And that gap has a cost. So compliance risk comes into the cost. When something needs to be changed and take us 6 weeks instead of 6 days, a customer experience that doesn't feel joined up, even when the journey design is excellent. Today, we are taking a practical executive look at what it means to actually solve that through the lens of Doxis, which has been on a very deliberate journey to become now, they're now calling the document intelligence company. We will have a three acts, and the set of questions will be based upon the strategy and context. Then we move towards product and integration, and then outcomes and roadmaps. I'm joined today by Dr. John Bates. Hi, John. He's the CEO of
Aye,
Doxis. John, for the context, you have had a busy 12 to 18 months. The company repositioned under a unified brand, sharpened the story around document intelligence, and completed the acquisition of Metaforce. Congratulations on that too, which brought
thank
native
you.
CCM and CXM capabilities directly into the platform. So that's a real move, not just narrative, right? Before we
Yes.
get into the details, I want to start at the top. Uh, so when you look at the market right now, what's actually changing? And how enterprises think about customer communications and where does the content intelligence fit into the picture?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. What we're observing is that what used to perhaps be independent categories, the requirements are increasingly converging. Things are coming together, and this just isn't in with regard to CCM or CXM, but it's with regard to categories like intelligent document processing. So understanding incoming documents, being able to classify and extract information, etc. And as well as things like you know just general document management, storing, managing, searching, archiving documents, and then automating processes around documents, and of course communicating and interacting with documents. So what we're increasingly observing use cases, because everything's about people buy use cases, and those use cases are increasingly involving multiple of these pieces. And you know, that we so that's why our vision is you have to have this together under one platform. It's a little bit more than just a light integration. We believe philosophically that you have to be able to do things through one interface and solve these problems, and that's why we arrived at this point. We call it document intelligence, so everything around, and of course AI end to end throughout, but the ability to use this platform, and with AI if you want to. So so that's the story.
Yeah, and I think it's really great put upon. Being an analyst, I have seen this kind of restructuring happening in the companies. We have seen from native to being partnership now to API integrations, and now someone who is offering unified platform. It's like a go-to-go platform for everybody. You don't need to get into multiple stakeholders, multiple issues, right? So that's a really great, and we really want to understand how you want to offer this native and unified platform in coming time. So moving along, we will just little bit discuss about the context and strategy of Doxis. Uh, it should be little crisp for the audience. So I just noticed that you say intelligent communications, right? Intelligent documents. So what's the real problem you're solving? Because in this market, a lot of vendors are converging on similar language. What I want to understand is where the real friction sits. Is it in the content itself, in the process of changing and approving the content, or in the last mile, getting in the right channel at the right time?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the problem that we're solving is allowing organizations to use the entire, document life cycle in their applications under one governance model, under one automation model, under one security model, under one automation model. And so what's the friction there, to your question? I think it's really around the fact that you've got a whole load in the world today of fragmented or siloed systems. Now, that's that actually sounds terrible, but people often opt into this because they often want a best of breed architecture. And a best of breed architecture means you don't just buy everything from SAP or whatever. You buy, Workday and for HR and SAP for ERP and Salesforce.com for CRM and so on. And so you end up with this system that's, somewhat siloed. And each of your systems, and maybe you've got verticalized applications as well, in the communications world, that means it can be hard to manage your communications consistently. And then when you are managing communications, it can be hard to keep track of what you actually sent and did, and indeed, allowing even the folks that receive those communications to interact with them. So I think that's the friction. And you don't want to constantly be involving IT. You want to ideally have lines of business freed up to manage easily their own communications, but to also know that it's compliant, it's going to be quick, speedy, low cost, and that you can get the right information to the right folks, and that they can interact with it, and that you can keep track of what you've sent. So I think that's the problem. It's not just that left to right flow. It's the fact that it's nested and comes back around, and you have to govern all of this ultimately.
Yeah. And I think that's perfectly answered here, because I have seen this market for many years, and one of the biggest challenges is silos. When we're talking about the legacy CCM, we are not just talking about document composition. We are talking about the guardrails that works upon the system. And initially, the management part is somewhere very weak. Again, we have the integrations there, but with different technology stack at all. So nobody's knows where the data coming from and who is actually seeing the data, right? The layering is not there. So again, unifying everything on the same platform makes a real epitome of the technology stack right now. And you are already operating well in CMS now, and we can here talk about why this thing comes, and that's a big fish in the sea here. So let's talk about the metaphors acquisition, and that helps you to move directly to CCM technology stack. So Doxis has been known in content service and document management, as you already mentioned. And I see CCM as a different category, different buyers, different competitors, of course, different competitors too, different buying cycle. So what changed that made this right move? Right now, was this buyer-led, or you can see the competitive pressure, or some insights from analyst firms? So what makes you this change happen in the ecosystem right now?
Yeah, well, I think there's a little bit of it's a little bit driven by use cases, a little bit driven by vision, and a little bit driven by then investigating this in more detail and talking to a lot of customers. So I think use cases were increasingly popping up. And as I say, people buy use cases. We create platforms, but people buy use cases. And I'll give you one example. One of them is human resources document management, which is kind of a horizontal use case, sometimes with a vertical, flavor, but a horizontal use case, and you're getting in things like, so you'll have a system like something like SAP Success Factors, let's say,
Yeah.
but you have to do a whole load of things around that. So you want to store lots of documents about your employees, whether it be their applications or their records or their resumes or their every year their appraisals or whatever. And then you also want to help with the processes and the documents that are coming into those processes, like job applications, onboarding of new employees, sending out contracts. And this is a perfect example of where it's not just about storing and managing documents. It's also about analyzing documents as they come in. It's about launching workflow, but it's about a lot of document creation, communication, even interaction, updating. So this is a really great use case. And we were increasingly getting involved in this use case. And so that's an example of where we saw the drive, the need to bring CCM, CXM under this framework. Now, also, then you get into the vision and go, look, this is clearly going to be something that you need in general. And then we went out and asked our customers, and in a survey, over 90% of our customers really strongly came back and said, we see the benefits of unified capabilities. We'd really like to do this. And, customers, like big insurance companies said, we already have a lot of technology for CCM, but we see this is something even different. The combination of allowing you to, generate, communicate, interact, and then store and archive this is something actually a little bit even different, that even though we have CCM capabilities from other providers, we might use this from you because it offers us something different for different use cases as well. So there's even a path in for upselling, even if there's competitive players in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And think how I can see here is two technology stack when Doxis and metaphors being combined together. We are seeing a two transition happening, one from the management side and one from the composition side. Now you have your own composition here. So everything is on same place. And you also mentioned about the unified platform, right? Just for the viewers, I want to understand more on like how exactly we are saying it's unified, right? Someone who is a buyer, either if he's not opting for unified platform, he wants to stay in that particular segment because the needs are different, the use cases are different, or do you want them to be on the unified platform, or they might lose something? So what's the take on it?
Yeah, I think that is a very fair question, and there's always, if you specialize on one thing, you can always have capabilities that other people don't have. And so for sure, I think, yes, you can be, maybe you've got some capabilities. However, with metaphors, we found what we thought was a very strong, best of breed player that hadn't maybe got to the scale of some of the other players, but had done very well in its native market in certain industries like insurance and banking, but was horizontally applicable. So we really liked that, and we really liked the team. So that alone is quite good. But yes, you can always specialize, but there's a danger if you need to bring different capabilities together, that you can become, let's say you need to do archiving and CCM, and you get two specialists in that. Stringing them together, stitching them together can create a Frankenstein's monster. That's the danger. Different
Yes.
models, different interfaces. So you get this beast lumbering around with different body parts from different parties. And that's the danger. The alternative, you have to make, of course, if you bring things together, you have to make them strong enough, but the sum of these capabilities has to give you something extra. And I think, this shared governance, shared automation, AI intelligence throughout, shared interface, and the ability to then rapidly, the speed of deployment, and the ease of management, that's got to give you a lot of capabilities. And not everybody wants to go to the nth degree on every single feature. So that's how I see the trade-off.
Yeah, and I think the example of what I see here is that the use case is very important, as you mentioned earlier, right? And again, there's a saying that you can't kill a mosquito with a bazooka. So, so again, you need to understand the use cases, and that really rightly put upon as that if we are giving unified platform, you still need to understand, right? So you can't just lose the Frankenstein. You need to have the control on your data. Need to control have on the content delivery part. So everything should be aligned. But again, if everything is on the same platform, it somewhere gives you an efficiency, somewhere gives the easiness that, all right, everything is
Yeah.
in my control. I don't need to get into different IT teams to connect different areas. And even the challenge
Yeah.
part is the latency part, right? We never know
Mm.
right now the political and geographical what's happening right now is somewhere you never know what's going to happen,
Mm.
right? So again,
Yeah,
everything
true.
is on unified platform, something which is future, right? So that's really greatly put upon. And Frank's example was really bang on. So again, uh, we know CCM, and I think for many years people consider CCM as document composition, but now
Yeah.
narrative, like where I see comes from the industry, I see the
Mm.
narrative here.
Mm.
So narrative has changed drastically in 3, 4, 5 years, 3, 4 years mostly
Mm.
from Gen AI,
Mm.
OpenAI's revolution on AI, right? uh, People used to talk about just document composition when you talk about when you see 2021 or before that. But after that, the change is too much, right? The content
Mm.
authoring, content intelligence. Now we're talking about agents, and it's just the tail is getting longer and longer, right? So every
Mm.
vendor started from CCM and now pushing towards CXM. So you are
Mm.
the only
Mm.
first company who started from content management. Now you're
Mm.
transitioning towards CCM to CXM. So
Mm.
you
Mm.
are setting a level one where the people
Mm.
are chasing level three. You started from level one, right? So you so again, so to position your stance here, like I don't see CXM as physical platform right now. I just CXM as a experience layer, which
Mm.
makes CXM more compatible with the end users, right?
Mm.
So again, for buyer's perspective, so do you think this is the different meaning at all? Like CCM and CXM is totally different
Mm.
engines,
Mm.
because if you say different engines, then we are talking about budgets, right? So in this, how you see the Doxis strategy? So where's the actual line between the two? And
Mm.
again, if you can put
Mm.
more light on context-centric version of plus interaction centric, which is now being the market right now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's the terminology is evolving. In fact, I'd love to get your thoughts on, what's the right terminology to use. But I think CCMs come from that world of generating documents in batch or on demand, or even going interactive. But then CXM is really about that interaction, isn't it, through digital forms and workflows and allowing action. And we think, and this is definitely one of the things we liked about Metaforce philosophy, because they were definitely taking this approach that the value is combining these into one platform. So not different engines, the same environment where you can generate documents and allow then interaction with them. And taking it to the next level is that let's say it's your annual insurance statement that's generated out to 1 million customers, and they receive this, but maybe they some opportunity to, I update the information in this statement, and that gets, I think, then interaction gets reflected and versioned in the document, and then we can manage that. So this idea of versioning, of sort of compliance governance, giving, understanding what's changed, versioning these things. I think this is all under the same framework, and then having an audit trail linking between these
Correct.
things. I think these things are really important. So I think it's not just CCM and CXM coming together, there's the value there, but it's also making that part of the whole document lifecycle and being able to track and audit. That is really actually very exciting, and it's almost the next era, I feel, of these technologies. The terminology, or whatever we call this, that we're always battling with that. So that's where we rely on you to tell us what we should call it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think the governance layer, I think, is the main soul of CCM, and
Mm,
hopefully we till now governance layer is being a main layer, and still all the companies somewhere focus on governance layer. But
mhm.
when we talking about CXM, the hard reflection is on AI part. Like if you are giving a lot of AI features into the system, so that's what market is speaking right now. Is like if you're giving the experience, you need to give experience through AI. And from that, I have seen multiple roadmaps of many vendors. AI is a common thing. AI in content, AI and
Mm,
workflows,
mm,
AI now agentic AI is coming into the picture, right?
mm,
Very few are talking about AI in regulated communications, right? So
mm.
for me, AI is a part of every vendor conversation right now. But I want to ask this specifically in the context of regulated communications, where a
Mm.
word, let's say, a, we are opting for creating and content, and where a word in the wrong place can be compliance violation or legal liability, right? In CCM, it's very
Yes.
heavily industrialized, right? So where does AI sit in the Doxis communications lifecycle? And what are the non-negotiable guardrails regarding use of AI you have? Because as you're setting up on, so buyers need to understand, right, the depth. Because in when you see, we see CCM's use cases in AI in two ways: one from transactional side, one from marketing side. Marketing, I feel, is not much more into the compliance side. They are mostly on the experience side. But when we talk about big banks, insurance companies, healthcares, they want to have first, tell me the guardrails, tell me how you gonna, where is my data gonna be, which model gonna be trained on my data, is it safe or not? So what's your stance on it?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and what I'll say to start with is the customer communication is not just about doing the communication, it's also about what goes in the communication, and who do you communicate to. And so AI for starters is a really helpful tool. So we use AI in a number of ways. One way is, we use it to enhance the way that we search through documents, what we call superhuman search. And that can be a very important capability to figure out, what do we want to send and who do we want to send it to. And similarly, we use it in use cases like fraud detection in customer interaction. So let's say somebody is, an insurance customer like we were communicating with, and there's a use case of uploading claims information. We get involved in this quite a lot, and
Yeah.
you want to, or indeed KYC information. You want to check fraud in those interactions, and we have capabilities of actually being able to identify fraudulent documents through all sorts of smart AI powered mechanisms. Um, I think the topic that you're getting at is, guardrails, but also repeatability and determinism. So you want to be careful in a regulated industry that you're not, if you're using AI to help you generate information, that, as you know, it can often, LLMs are not necessarily deterministic, so they can give you a different answer on a different circumstance, and that can be problematic for regulated industries. So I think you still have to marry up rules and template based worlds, and this is one of the guardrails, and knowing when to use this that complies with certain regulations with, let's say, generative AI, if you want to help it with the communication. So you give it its areas where you can, perhaps help to create something, but other areas where it's based on, firm information, you need to make sure that that's researched and checked, and in compliance with rules and regulations, and that's the appropriate templates used to actually apply that information, because you don't want generative AI to come up with the projection of your what your pension might be worth or something like that necessarily, but you might want it to give you some words in a paragraph sending out to employees or customers or something like this. So I think there's a balance where you have to make sure that for the key information you you keep within those guardrails, and you're actually, for regulated industries, not going off piste with AI.
And I think, John, when you said balance, I think something which every end user can relate, because now we can't just give autonomy to AI. We need human in the loop concept, and that's
Yeah.
why very few players are putting this human in the loop in the
Hmm.
context of CCM, or let's say another technology, right? We
Yes.
somewhere, as an analyst, we feel that we are somewhere moving along with that flow. It's a boat running on, everybody sailing it. Nobody understand what's the end goal, right? So we need to understand what's exactly AI can do for you. We need to set the use cases. You need to set the guardrails, as you mentioned. And I really like the point where you mentioned about the templates. Again, it's one of the core area. Like every
Mhm.
CCM starts with templates, right? And
Yes.
how much an end user can operate AI, and how much is in his hands. Again, when we say to business IT users, to someone who's not understanding the coding, we have low code, no codes. So that's the picture is very
Mm.
clear. But
Mm.
again, putting lot of AI will somewhere put into a pressure, right? Uh,
Yes.
that's really great put upon, right? Uh, so you being a pioneer of in the industry, John, and I think you have this companies to metaphors, Doxis now. So I want to understand some of the concrete example where you have seen unifying content, because this thought process should have come from, there should be some dialogues happening before that, right? Because you have seen the acquisition not happening in day to day. It takes a lot of time to understand what exactly we need to do. So can you give me one concrete example where unifying content and communications, it can deliver measurable result? Let's say time to
Yes.
change, compliance risk reduction, cost reductions, so whatever the clearest proof point is, and even if you can give some numbered baseline results, will be helpful for the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's quite a few really cool use cases, and we've touched on some already, actually. I think there's some that are horizontal and some that are vertical. And but definitely the one that that Metaforce has really seen the most, I think, is this requirement for insurance, sort of communications and interaction. And what we're seeing now is, in the insurance world, this deepening. So this is things like
Mhm.
generating statements, generating information, but then customers coming back, updating that, but also coming in and doing things like claims management, putting in an insurance claim and then checking that with fraud detection.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing there is these end-to-end sort of life cycle of a customer use cases. It's all around documents. We're generating documents, they're interacting with documents, they're then uploading documents. Well, they're uploading documents when they become a customer, they're uploading documents to do an insurance claim. So everything is processes around documents, and always communications is part of it. And I think what you're looking at here is potentially a 10x improvement in the sort of productivity of organizations by bringing this together into one platform. I think it's very powerful, and you see the same in healthcare, as well. If things like, if you identify that, for example, a customer has a disability,
Mhm.
then you can ensure that the communications complies with the relevant requirements. So it's that life cycle and context. I think context is super important, because if you see the flow of documents, you can start to build up a picture, and
Mhm.
then you can start to make sure the communication even is personalized in the right way for individual customers. And this is not just the fact that you might get this productivity improvement, but you're getting customer satisfaction
Mhm.
improvements as well, however you measure that. So and we've already talked about the HR application. We're already seeing HR organizations achieve radical improvements in terms of their productivity and time to value, in this kind of use case.
Mhm. And it's again, the thought process was the communication for all. And
Yes.
I have seen ADA Act, Disable Act, I guess, is somewhere very
Mm,
important, and
yes.
this somewhere forces vendors to put some of the documents into brails. Right now, we have some
Yes.
offerings right now. So
Yes.
again, communication for all is a really great picture, and
Mm,
I really love that you have just rebranding happen, and you have the thought process where you are talking about communication for all. So not
mm,
just about document composition, but you are just getting into on the front seat. So at the end, on the roadmap side,
yes.
again, you now have a platform that spans
Mm,
capture, document
mm,
automation, and
mm.
communication now. So let's imagine I'm a buyer. I want to start. So how do you want to package for me? So at every different maturity levels.
Yeah, I think we want to make this as easy as possible,
Mhm.
and we're trying to keep it simple by bringing everything into one platform with one interface. So for the customer, they're it's reducing integration complexity, simplifying the maintenance, making it easier to operate in mission critical environments. But also, what we're trying to do is to, I've said to you a couple of times, people buy use cases, and
Mhm.
and I, and we're trying to package those use cases as much as possible, both vertical and horizontal use cases, because the idea is that then you can start with something that looks very similar to your use case,
Mhm.
and it can be customized to your needs. But the idea is that you get time to value without the big bang onboarding, trying to minimize that as much as possible. So I think it's one platform with use cases on top. And of course, we're trying to make also, for the AI era, put an APIs around the whole platform, so that agents and generative coding, you can also use that to put your own layers on top
Mhm.
if you want to. So we believe you can think of Docs as a bit like the document operating system. Basically, we don't think you can disintermediate these components. We think they have to come together to be the document operating system, the end-to-end document operating system. But of course, you may want to put your own, other additional capabilities on top, and have applications that can drive, processes, communications,
Mhm.
intelligent document processing. So, we're also trying to be totally open to be able to connect through what we call smart bridges into whatever environment someone has. So if they have a best of breed environment, we want to be able to tap into that, be able to understand it from a process and a document point of view, and then layer use cases on top that can make it as simple as possible with a quick start.
Yeah, I think that's a really great start for in coming months. And I think the audience can, and even the end user community can definitely gonna see lots of new things coming upon in this 12-24 months from Doxis. And John, I really appreciate your time and your candor here. The frame I'm taking from this conversation, and I think this is the right lens for anyone evaluating the space right now, is that customer communications are becoming governed end-to-end life cycle. We are not just talking about isolated outputs. And the question is, enterprise isn't should I fix the life cycle? In my context, what I understand from the conversation right now, it's how fast can I fix it without taking on more risk than I'm removing, right? So that's the call. And what Doxis is betting, backed by the Metaphors acquisition and the platform move, is that unified approach gets you there faster and with better governance, uh, not being in putting into the template sprawls or assembling the pieces by yourself. To our audience, thank you for joining. We'll share a full report here, and we can have a follow-up blog. Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.